My experience with COVID at the moment, I've experienced it in Australia, having been locked down for 4 months. But in terms of where we are at the moment, in terms of South Auckland, where I currently working at the moment, is our community. In terms of the resilience, and obviously there's publications and people on the news saying bad things about Samoans and all that sort of stuff. For us, we're quite resilient people. We gather together as a nainga, and we try and sort and get the help that we need. The issue that we're facing at the moment with our vulnerable community is really around the digital space. Some of our patients, because I'm working sort of with South Seas Healthcare, and some of the issues that we've faced, 90% of their patients can't actually call their GPs because they don't have internet or data. This is an ongoing issue before COVID, and still we're still in the same position. Having the first lockdown, we still haven't addressed that issue around connection and connectivity of our Pacific people. Hence why a lot of us, like myself and our organisation, we've offered our service to our Pacific service providers who are doing a fantastic job out there trying to vaccinate our people and our communities. Sometimes it is quite slow in a way that, the horse already bolted. In a word, that we should have been the priority list in terms of vaccinations, but once again, that's just a political issue that a lot of our service providers are now trying to address. The saying is, buy Pacific for Pacific, because we kind of understand our communities and what's going on with them, and so hence why we've band together. All our Pacific. I was just on a Pacific Zoom meeting yesterday, and once again, our businesses still lack that digital, space as well, literacy. Once again, we don't have a plan, but we were trying to get a plan in place so that everybody it should be a rite of passage to allow everybody, especially the vulnerable, to connect, even having the basic like data and internet. So if you look at the stats, 60% of students, Pacific students, don't have internet or data. So those are huge numbers. And so from our perspective, from an IT perspective, we can only do so much. And so hence why we go out and we talk to other partners to help us sort of connect our communities together via, technology.
Excellent. And I'm just coming back to main speaker view, which you're on. So yeah, that's a brilliant rundown of the challenges that your community faces. And I was in two minds about the name and the design, but I said to my designer, I said, could you please put the Pacific flower in there somehow? And I thought, oh, maybe someone might get a little bit upset, but I also thought it's a great show of support for the community because the identification and racism that has been experienced. I might just remove that spotlight. The racism that's been experienced is just not on, and you have my full support, and I'm sure you have everyone's support in this room. And I'm not sure we will crack how to get connectivity to everyone. It's one of the big challenges from my work with the Digital Divide. I think there's 300,000 people. It might be 200,000 households, but it's a sizable number over all of New Zealand. And if we, it's just proving, if it was ubiquitous, it would certainly help. So we'll come to maybe that'll be one of the things out of the back of this is what are our plans to help the government and the big organisations with all these different plans? What's the word on the street? How do we do it? So if I can just remind everyone, we're Talanoa Live, and we've got a range of speakers. We're going to share a quick piece, and then we'll actually pop you into a breakout room. So before we do that, I will introduce Ian Taylor, who was the genesis of the name, and has also got some great ideas around some of the things that global businesses experience. And I'll introduce Ian and let him introduce himself a little bit better and share his thoughts. So I don't want to say too much in case he's saving that for another day, but over to you.
Abai, thank you very much. Ko mohaka te awa, ko haruru te maunga, ko ngati pāhau ere te hapu, ko ngati kānginu te iwi, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I'll keep this brief because I actually do want to go to that phrase Talanoa, and it's definitely not gifted from me. It's a phrase I heard a couple of weeks ago, and it just rang so loud that listening with respect is what we need to do now at this time. And I think the thing that has disappointed me most is that the divides are getting bigger in this debate and this discussion. And I think we need to start to accept we are where we are. And even as I watch the news, there seems to be lots of kind of focus on the things that we have done wrong. We've done things right, and definitely we have done things wrong as well. But I think the thing that stood out for me most is that we are in lockdown level 4. 16 months ago, we went into lockdown level 4, and this one is identical to the one we had 16 months ago. So the biggest lesson we can learn from that is that we did know this was going to come back. We needed to be listening to the people on the ground to how a level 4, when it came back, might look. This one looks exactly the same, and people are suffering exactly the same, when we could have started putting things in place that would mean that it wouldn't be so damaging. I think, politicians have to front up and accept that, yes, we would have done that differently had we known this, but other people need to step back from that and go, we're all in this together now, so let's forget about that. We are where we are, let's move on. I read a really interesting piece by Nick Mowbray where he said that in times of crisis, leaders need to get down off the balcony and dance on the dance floor. And I think that's one of the wisest things I've heard, but put that in context, if you can't get down off the balcony, which, the Prime Minister, she can't go dancing on every dance floor, but if you can't get down off the balcony, then you have to start listening to the people who are on the dance floor, and I don't think that's happening. And I think if we are to move together from this more quickly, we have got to start listening to the people on the dance floor, the people in the Pacifica community, the people who could have been operating under level 4 if someone had listened to how they were going to do it. Instead, we have that sledgehammer to crack a nut that didn't need to be this big.
Brilliant view. Thank you very much. So the other thing there, what I'd like to add to what Ian has said is, having heard some of the things he's talked about on the phone to me, there are some specifics around how things could have been done differently. So it's not just so you don't get the wrong picture, it's not about throw the baby out with the bathwater with everything, but there were some very smart ideas that would enable businesses like Ian that have people that go around the world setting things up so that they can then operate out of their Dunedin head office. But the people have got to be able to go overseas and then come back, and there's some pretty smart ways, and that's the idea.
I have posted the article just about 5 minutes before we started. I'd finished it, so I've posted it, and again, the idea that I've posted isn't saying this is how we do it. It's kind of like, hey, have a look at this. This looks like something that could work, but let's discuss this, because the idea that my staff who were living in flats couldn't go from here to work each day in their own isolated bubble to work on the stuff overseas and come back doesn't make any sense. And it's this kind of, I talk about the field of daffodils that I saw dying last night. If we had been really thinking about this over the past 16 months, we could have had a position and things in place where groups of people living in their isolation areas, little could go out and work in those huge fields remotely and harvest those fields. I call them those fields of hope. The daffodils were going to be used for the Cancer Society. I've said enough.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. And just heard a bit of news from someone's TV there. So just remind everyone to keep yourself on mute. Otherwise, I have to press mute all, including the speaker, to then bring the speaker off. But yeah, some good points, and thank you very much for those. This is the opportunity for people to share ideas, ask questions, say what about, what if. But again, reiterate Talanoa, listen and share with respect. So why don't we go to a completely different part of the country, and Hinerangi actually just asked a question related to what you were saying. So I think it's probably appropriate that we get Hinerangi up next. And I'm just looking through all the faces. I think you're on this page. There you go.
Kia ora hoa ma, and I'd love to spend my time in Talanoa or Wānanga, where we actually engage in pātai. So firstly, I just want to acknowledge Elia and the work that you're doing in Tamaki Makaurau for our Pacific families. I also am a descendant of Samoa and Tonga, so big mihi to you. But Sir Ian, you're all class, you're awesome. And just thinking about the storm that was 2 weeks ago, which wasn't about COVID, but it was about mātauranga Māori. My question is the connection between those two topics a lack of respectful learning?
I think that it's a lack of knowledge. I think I don't like using the words sexism, racism, those sort of bundling things up. Now we've got wokeism. Bundling those things up says this is the side of the fence I stand on. And when you look at the core of all of those isms, they come from a level, at the worst case, ignorance, at the much kinder end, misunderstanding, not having had the stories told. And what I have found is that as we share these stories, they are being listened with respect. And I am absolutely blown away by the responses that happened to that firestorm that I got involved a couple of weeks ago, as we started to share the stories, including with the man who started the firestorm, who came from the position that just said, well, actually, I didn't really know all of that. So let's make sure this kind of listen with respect, but we also have to tell our stories. And I think that if we as Māori, we have to take responsibility as well, that perhaps we haven't shared those stories well.
Well, ka pai, I just came off a Indigenous Economies and COVID Response Kōrero for APEC, and there were a couple of hundred people from 19 economies on that call. Some of the things that I heard from Pānia Tyson Nathan was, when we can connect our values, including our traditional values, to the value that we create and attract in our economies, then we will be on the right track. And she called for a global market for those stories. So I think sometimes it has to be a demand, create demand for telling our stories. She also used words about culturalizing commerce rather than commercializing culture. So those two different energies are very, very, they emit a different kind of energy. So when we talk about commercializing culture, we can be talking about the appropriation of our culture. So I really appreciate, Ryan, that you talked about the word Talanoa, because I came on this and I was like going, oh, am I going to get the eek factor? So it's really cool that you thought about it. You talked to Elia first and engaged him in that conversation. But sometimes when we commercialize culture, it can feel like that. But culturalizing commerce is a different energy. And I just leave that seed, not my words. They were Pānia Tyson Nathan from Māori Tourism. She is a godmother of kick-ass uri, if that's such a thing. So, ngā mihi. And you can find me in Wairoa when I'm not under Taranaki Maunga. And I'm glad to be part of Kōrero Digital, and Sir Ian is our patron. So kia ora tātou.
Tēnā rawa atu koe. My that is, thank you very much, the long version of Tākwe. So yeah, that's a really interesting concept. We'll just get Frankie lined up, ready to go, and bring a different cultural perspective in there, being Chinese. But that point of commercializing culture, the most obvious one is the All Blacks doing the haka and everybody doing the haka. But then on the reverse of culturalizing commercialism, which actually, if I'm not wrong, Hinerangi, that's probably the way to go in terms of the big concept discussion of you're looking at the Te Ao Māori worldview and how they can help, let's say, big business change from ruining the world to looking after the world and the people. If I maybe paraphrased it a bit brief, forgive me, but thank you very much. So now we'll spotlight Frankie Wang, the man with the name. I love that name. Wish I gave that name. So Frankie, thank you for being on board. So Frankie comes from a financial background, is Chinese or Kiwi Chinese. I just think of him as Kiwi. So welcome aboard and look forward to your perspective.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Queensland Timona, ko Suzhou Tiawa, ko Huangpu Timona, ko Honko Timalai, ko Ngāti China Te Iwi, ko Wang Tuku Whānau, ko Frankie Toku Inoa, no lena, tēnā koutou katoa. So thank you. And Pani is also my godmother as well. And it's perfect timing that you line me up here, right? Because I've been learning a lot about the cultural business together with her on the journey that we spent time in China about 5 years ago. And it was an amazing time that we spent together. And when I was young, and then she was telling me everything about that when you want to do business with a different culture, you don't send your lawyers and accountants. You send your cultural advisors first. And you establish those cultural links first, understand the relationships, finding those differences, and then try to live with the difference in between, because you will always have different perspectives from different cultures. You don't necessarily agree, but it doesn't really hurt the trade, investment, and also what economical relationships. So I've been living in New Zealand for 21 years. So for those of you know me, I'm a big advocate for mental health. And I guess for the Asian, or particularly for Chinese and also Indian Korean community, there's a gap in terms of how we address the mental health issues. Knowing, for example, I haven't seen my mom for 547 days, and that is still counting. And that's a long time. She used to live with me, but because we sent her away before COVID, just before COVID, and then because of COVID hit, then she couldn't come back, and she doesn't have residency here. So again, this is not just my family, this is many families, hundreds of those families out there. And also there's a lot of migrants, especially for Chinese and then Korean and Indian migrants that both of us work. And you've got your little ones working around at home, and sometimes dealing with that is really hard. And also your work and your life balance is literally just 1 minute away from one room to the other. So how we actually mitigate that is another big topic as well. So I'm sitting on Ngāti Whātua Runanga's mental health board. And I've been on it for the last three and a half years, and I've been lucky enough to see and learn how the mental health systems is actually taking place in this country. And personally, I think there's a lot of room to grow, especially for the Asian community, including applying for grants, including applying for research funds to address those risks, but also to how we actually line up with the right specialists. There are not that many mental health specialists who can speak our languages. This is another gap. So if I am putting a room with another Pākehā specialist, I'm fine probably, but for a lot of the people that have been, they've only come to this country probably over the last 2 to 3 years. So they are going through that cultural transformation of migrating into a country that they had a lot of hope for. And this is why I came to New Zealand 21 years ago, and I'm still very proudly living here, calling this place as a home. But for a lot of migrants, especially for those who came to New Zealand in the last 2 to 3 years, these people really struggle because they haven't had the opportunity to actually integrated into the community and finding out how this community society it works, because the medical system, the tax system, the business systems, they are all largely different from their country, their home countries. And that's not just Chinese or Korean, that's all the Asian countries as well, from Eastern country. On the business side, it's, because with my role at the BNZ, I see a lot of the businesses that they need some help with, not financially, but give them the hope, give them the ability to connect with the other businesses in the same sector or different sectors, giving them the hope to actually keep them going. And I absolutely 100% agree with Ian, and I've been reading a lot of your LinkedIn posts as well. And I think for a lot of the businesses in New Zealand, we export a lot, we also import a lot. When we are actually in this lockdown, we don't have the ability to physically see them and travel to those trading destinations. And those synergy will actually eat our lunch. And at the moment, we are not getting any, should I say, directions, or should I say any policy or any constructive policy that will be put in place supporting our exporters to go. And how are we actually going to address this? This is a two-way trade, what opportunity there.
Frankie,
I'll probably pause there.
Yeah. No, that's a really good rundown. And hey, look, do you mind if I ask you a couple of sensitive questions? And they'll be sensitive for everybody, but they're the questions that everyone might talk about, right? So this is part of the listen and respect. And it's something that I have tried to tackle among my many focuses, and that's probably a bit of a hint there. But the services for different ethnicities, whether we call them migrants or new Kiwis, especially the ones that are new and are finding their feet. I think the part of the question is around the provision of services for them, and part of my question to it is it a matter of providing 226 different capabilities by the government, i.e. Ministry of Health psychologists that can speak 226 languages, or is it about doing a better job of when people come in, helping them learn English, or having some sort of requirement so that they can come and be part of the community? Now, this is something that Elia, Joey, anyone who's from a different country that speaks a different language, English is not the first language, or in reverse, like when I lived in Sweden and I didn't speak Swedish, the same challenges. So what I'm sort of looking at is, while it's a sensitive discussion, because some people might say rude things, which we don't want, what we want those people to do is hear the positive discussion about a positive solution that does actually make a difference. So where do you think the biggest difference could be made?
Right, so 15% of this total population in Aotearoa is Asian, and 5% of this place is Chinese. And in New Zealand, rephrased, in Auckland, we've got 28% are Asian. So there's a significant portion of Chinese, Korean, and also Indian portion. So having those translated documents are made available for these
translated documents, absolutely. Do we not have those?
Some of the places that we don't. So we don't.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, we don't.
So is that, say the Ministry of Health does, being a government department, hopefully, but say the little GP on the corner, who's the local GP, doesn't have the translation capability, or doesn't have the English translated into various languages, including Mandarin in your case.
There are Asian GPs, like being Chinese and Korean ones, and we know a lot of those. And I think what usually happens is that when you come into a new place, you tend to look for your own people, and that's your bubble, right? So you go to your own people, you formalize your relationship with a couple of the people in the community speaking different languages. That's all fine. The challenge is when you step out of this bubble, your community, and to integrate it into the wider community. And that's where the challenge becomes. And this is something that I've experienced myself. Speaking a language being English is not a challenging position for a lot of people, but it is like challenging your comfort zone, challenging something that you already know that, I'm lucky I came to New Zealand when I was only 17, but for a lot of people that came here when they are 30 or 35. So they already formalize a way of doing things, and having them to change the way that they are not comfortable with, and also when they're financially or mentally not available to transform themselves in such way, that's where the real challenge is. I mean, that's to my view. So I think this is where then, business club, the things that you've been doing with what FQY, and that's something that can really change and make a difference for a lot of people, because they find a sense of belonging. And also they're putting, so when I talk about the positive side here, when I talk to my son, he's got a lot of different friends from different countries at the primary school. And this is a perfect opportunity for him to understand, one, how to appreciate someone from a different culture, a different country, understanding their perspective, and take that as a skill set as they are growing up, as an adult, that they can work globally. They can go to any places, any country, to work in different companies and managing about 80 or 100 of different cultures, and they are fine. It's just seamless.
Cultural IQ.
Yeah, that's the cultural intelligence, CQ part. So for example, BNZ, we've got about 87 languages spoken every day. So again, this is the opportunity for my son. So when he grows up older, and he knows exactly how to handle a different conversation from a different cultural background. Sorry, I've
No,
said
that's
a lot.
right. I was about to say, but thank you very much for the input. What I want to do now is just put everyone into a breakout room with about 3 to 4 people, and you'll be able to have a chat. So what the usual format is just to introduce yourself, what you do briefly, and what your lockdown situation is, and just go around the room and share. So if anyone's hogging the airtime, feel free to tell them politely, hey, share a bit of time with the rest of us, so that we can all get a little bit of a chat. And then we'll come back and we'll come to Cedar, you're in Gisborne, aren't you? Yes. Alrighty. So let me find my magic breakout room, which does, oh, there it is. It's got own button now. Oh my goodness. Okay, so we've got that many people. I'm going to take a guess and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 15. I'm guessing. So there we go. Jump into your rooms as you get your invite. Have a good yarn, Talanoa, meet the person, and come back not strangers.
Room 5.
And turn your videos on, please. Forgot to say that. Whoops, bit late. So who we got left here? We've got Debs Hancock. Oh, no. Debs is still there. Someone else left. Got Mark Heseltine in a Max Headroom background. Debs and Andrew, can you pop your videos on, please? There we go. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, sorry, I said not now to jumping into a breakout room because, to be honest, I've just spoken up, and I work with Cedar, so I'm really glad that I haven't missed her talking. So
that's all right. If you've just woken up, this is Cara, who works with me, by the way. Oh, here's
Hi.
Sherry back. Hey, Sherry.
Hi.
Just waking up's fine. Having kids on the call's fine. Having my dog barking all the time is fine. Everything's fine.
You put me in a room by myself, by the way, Ryan.
Oh, automatically it did that. Sorry. Yeah, I can't see them all because it's all broken down into lists. But we've got Sherry.
I can move you into.
That's okay. You can keep me with this group of people.
So let's go around the room. Let's start with Sherry, Nikki, and Debs. Introduce yourself. Lockdown situation. What you doing?
Well, as head of IT for RS, I am, my lockdown situation is I have to work from home all week. I have a nice setup now, although I have monitors and my laptop on boxes, which I was told off about, but no, it's going well. I've got my dog behind me. She does a lot of work when she's not sleeping.
That's good. What about the daughter and the husband? It's two kids.
Both of my daughters are down at uni, one in Wellington and one in Dunedin.
Ah, okay.
And the hubby is, he's working from home and in the office, so he goes back and forth.
Cool. Nikki?
Yeah, hi. Kia ora, everyone. I'm currently at home doing my student thing, working on a wee project with a company, but they're all mostly in Australia. So I've been doing a lot of Teams meetings and just come off a big 2-hour Zoom call into this one straight away. So yeah, it's good fun.
My dad told me when I was a kid, don't watch too much TV, you get square eyes, but I noticed that none of us have got square eyes. So, Karen?
Yeah, sorry, I had to leave halfway and then come back. Sorry about that. Are we introducing ourselves?
Yes.
We are, sorry. I'm Karen, and I work in the external engagement team at the AUT for the School of Engineering, Computer and Mathematical Sciences. So, yeah, working at home and currently trying to change loads of events and student assessments and showcases. So, yeah, it's been pretty tough time at the university over the last week, which it's been the same, I know, for a lot of other people. But yeah, hard times, but we're getting there, and we're kind of used to it now. So,
yeah. Very good.
I like the picture of your dog, Karen.
Yeah, yes, it's cute, isn't it? Yeah, so that's a dog that doesn't live here anymore. So, okay, yeah, it's a nice picture, isn't it?
Very cool. And we'll get Debs to introduce yourself now.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Debs. I'm in Gisborne and I work with CEDA. So we work on the Uffy app, and I was meant to be doing some analysis, but I was just having a sleep. But I am excited about the analysis because we launched last year during lockdown, and so we now have data which shows the reactions or the emotions in response to lockdowns, and I'm really keen to do that analysis to see what words were associated when people said they were feeling anxious. So that's what I should have been doing instead of sleeping.
Wow, that's all right. You can get back to it. And we've got Caro, and then we'll jump back into the room. Oops.
Hi there. I'm Caro. I work with Ryan at AFQY and plus have a photography business and 2 children at home, homeschooling them. So it's always a little bit of challenge, 2 of us running Zoom calls and different meetings in different rooms. So try and coordinate everyone. But yeah, all good. Lovely to meet you all.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. Now I'm going to bring everyone back from breakout rooms, so we will join back together. And here they all come, because I forgot to tell them to come straight away, because they get 60 seconds. But we'll see how fast, because it'll pop, 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 pop. And the slower they come in, it's a sign of good conversations being held. Here we go. People slowly coming back. The screens are getting smaller. The faces are getting.
Well done, Ryan.
Thank you, mate. I took a guess. I was like, I don't even know how many people are here at the moment, but I think I've got the right number of rooms. So we'll just wait for everyone to come back in, then we'll start with CEDA and keep on trucking. So hopefully you got to say hello and meet someone you didn't know, make a connection, share a little bit about your situation, and enjoy the connection of person. So, oh, here we go. I was going, where is everybody? Should be on the 60 seconds. Come on, people. Come on. There we go. Now it's flooding back in. Basically, everyone was still talking, and the 60-second run out, and you got kicked back into this room, huh?
Breakout room. Thank you, Dale.
That's right. So feel free to connect, share LinkedIn links, however you want to get a good conversation. And I want to welcome back Cedar and her hat. Ta-da! So I'll just quickly introduce you. I met Cedar online. Through a LinkedIn,
Who didn't?
Through a LinkedIn post initially, and it was so cool, lots of energy in the hat, and I made a comment, didn't say anything about the hat. And then the next day, I was at the Aotearoa AI Summit, and there she was in her hat. So I was like, hey, yo. And I was great to meet in person.
Kia ora.
Welcome to Talanoa Live. Look forward to hearing your thoughts from Gisborne community. How's it down there?
Yeah, kia ora. Kia ora te whanau. Well, for those of you that don't know who I am, I te tātoku mama no Papua New Guinea me Scotland ia, I te tātoku papa, ko maraturi te maunga, ko mangahau ni te awa, ko te atanga hauiti te iwi, ko te whanau rua tauparu te hapu, and ko Cedar Naden tōku ingoa. So a little bit about me, I'm going to keep it like really nice and short because, you know, that's always come in with a bang, hey, but I'm the co-founder of Awhi app, and I actually did see my co-founder in here, Debs Hancock. Yep. So we have created a peer support app which helps to measure real-time wellbeing data, and more significantly, allowing to collect all of that data to help organisations or groups or whatever it might be to give the right support at the right time. So an amazing preventative tool. So instead of being that ambulance at the bottom of the maunga, we're steps before that. And I'm quite grateful that I am running after Frankie, because he touched on, you know, mental health and well-being, and even going into the breakout room, I was really fortunate to have Hinerangi, kia ora, she's just down the road from us here in Tairāwhiti, down in Wairua. And I think significant, so here in Tairāwhiti, here in Gizzy, we're quite isolated to COVID. I mean, we are very aware that it's out there and it's doing a lot of damage. But again, yeah, very, very isolated. So our viewpoint on it is a little bit different, but still factoring in how it's affecting many of our whānau, and importantly, our mental health and well-being. And what we've seen come through on the Awhi app, I can just see Debs putting through some links there, is the stats that we had in the lockdown 16 months ago and to now. And even the other day, we actually broke down a lot of the stats around people's well-being across Aotearoa before lockdown, during, on the day of the announcements and everything, and after. And the anxiety has gone through the roof. More importantly, though, I think that is just something that people have done to be able to acknowledge the emotion that they're having, because half the time, that's actually the hard thing to identify, is the type of well-being that we're going through, or the feelings that we're going through, sorry. But more importantly, there are also the counter sort of feelings of people expressing how grateful they are, albeit we're in these uncertain times. And earlier, you know, with Sir Ian Taylor and with Hinerangi speaking about being kind and being able to acknowledge all of our differences, I think on a global scale, Aotearoa being, in a way, the game changers with this whole virus, if we're able to actually collaborate together and figure out how we can acknowledge the significance of our well-being, identify that, and be able to implement it in giving the support to all of our people, no matter what culture they are, no matter what gender, you know, all of those things, that would help to create really, I suppose, really good coping mechanisms around, you know, the uncertainties of all these things. So yeah, that's sort of my little input, my little seed I'll plant in with that. And I can still see Debs putting through all of this. Yeah, a really proactive approach to well-being. So if people were able to actually, you know, say, for example, come onto the app and share their daily reflections on how they're feeling, and have our peers support us, but more importantly, have these organisations or have our government actually see where it is that they need to implement the different support, whether it's financial support, whether it's medical support, whether it's technological support, where it's getting access to internet, getting access to data, all of those things. I think that would be a really, really good bridge that we could gap across the whole.
Sounds good to me. So homework for everyone tonight is to download the app and check it out, give it a play. And yeah, that sounds quite interesting. The ability to be really specific in the type of care that people need based on the input that they provide. So thank you very much. Appreciate that from Gizzy. We've got another person from Gizzy who's probably not in Gizzy. They're probably just up the road from me, but I'll come back to you, Venus. We'll go to the Waikato with Garry. So I'll just hang on. I'll just unspotlight you, move spotlight, and put spotlight on Garry Johnston, who will be super impressed. I didn't call him Gary Collins like I normally do, because you're Garry Johnston. But how's it going in the Waikato? And I'll leave it up to you to introduce what's probably been keeping you busy for the last few months.
Yes. Kia ora, koutou, Garry Johnston, taku ingoa. So I'm based here in the kind of cloudy Waikato. I have the great fortune of living on a little 50-acre large lifestyle block, really, with my 3 teenagers, and for a day job working in health and doing a little bit of advisory work in tech. The organisation I work in health is the Waikato DHB, which may be familiar to lots of people, which has raised the profile of cybersecurity, which is interesting in itself. First of all, just to me, to all the other speakers, for sharing your insights and your reflections. It's really genuinely interesting to learn and to kind of see parallels for what I see in my day job, and I guess what I've seen just generally. And we were discussing in our breakout group this really interesting bias that I think Kiwis, and we all seem to kind of suffer from. Oh, there you go. Awesome. Thanks, Sirian. This bias of us really reverting back to type really quickly and having this sense of inertia for change, so this lack of ability to plan. And if you kind of link that back, I was just reflecting on that with Sir Michael Cullen passing this week, who kind of brought us the platform of a savings vehicle through the Kiwi Fund. And that was a huge effort to overcome, because historically Kiwis have been amazingly poor savers. And I see a little bit of that in our culture, in our behaviour now around COVID, where we've had this incredible window, 170 days, I think was the number or thereabouts, between the last lockdown and this one, where we've lived with this almost paradisical freedom, yet not enough. And I think some of the kōrero tonight has been about that lack of planning, that lack of taking the opportunity that was presented in that hiatus to really strengthen for the next time it occurs, and there will be a next time. And I see that in our organisation. I see that in my own organisation at the moment. So I think that's really interesting observation for me. The second thing I think in COVID is this digital abstraction that we've got, and how easy it is to miss, I guess, the core essence of what Ryan promotes, which is know the person. It's really easy to shoot off a text in a heartbeat, kind of venting, because that's something that seems anonymous, seems disconnected, yet on the receiving side of the text is a human that's responding however they've taken your text, good, bad or ugly. And the nuance of human connection, I think, is an area that I worry about, particularly with the digitization generally of our lives, but particularly in COVID. And I kind of wonder about those two things, that kind of bias toward lack of action, and I guess then how do we continue to explore the humanity that is this, in fact, this conversation moving forward. So there's my kind of couple of insights for you all tonight.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And have things got back to normal for the WDHB?
Kind of. Yeah, we've largely restored our systems back to the way that they were. Not that they were necessarily amazing to start with, but they were what they were. It's been an incredible effort of endeavour, of human endeavour, and of persistence, and of patience, and equally of human resilience. And so at a personal level, I've learned a heap about myself from that journey, and I see the incredible commitment of our clinicians to achieving at all odds patient care, and I really take heart from that. But I equally see the amazing gaps in our planning as an organisation, and that's really where my focus is at the moment, about how do we take the immediate learnings from the event, which was really unfortunate, and it is a form of terrorism in my view, where someone comes in and effectively hijacks someone's life for money or for effect. And how do we take that learning though and share that learning? And that's something that, a little bit like mental health, I think we don't yet have a way of effectively sharing these terrible experiences so that we can all learn and benefit from them, because it's kind of a little bit awkward, it's a little bit embarrassing, and certainly in the middle of the event you're dealing with an active attacker that is another human somewhere outside of your immediate control, that you don't know, that you can't see, that you don't understand their real motivations, that may have another go at you. And so that causes distress, and a little bit like the distress that we see in low COVID lockdown. Certainly as a hospital community, we're having to work through that. How do we deal with that distress? How do you cope with it? But more importantly, how do we start to share the learnings and the lessons from the event itself?
Yeah, definitely some huge learnings. Well, thank you very much for your input. Really appreciate it. Now we're going to go back down towards the bottom of the country and to Jenna Hollis. So we recently had the first AFXY in Hamilton, which Garry attended, and the third one in Christchurch, which Jenna spoke at. So let me just put you on the old spotlight there. So ARA, so we've got AUT in the room, and we have our AFQI events at AUT in Auckland, and in Christchurch we have them at the ARA Institute, which is right in the middle of town. And the whole concept is to be able to have a cohort of students that come along, and I provide networking training, although we didn't get to do that for this cohort, so that they can comfortably and confidently come and network with the industry, make connections, have coffees, discussions, lead to jobs. So this time, rather than having, some old fart like me talk, I said to Nigel Young at ARA, I said, why don't you get one of your students to talk? Why don't you get one of the grads? And I gave the brief of what's a grad's perspective of getting a job in tech. So I honestly was expecting, I know Jenna doesn't mind me saying this because I think I said it about 1,000 times, I honestly expected some grad to bumble through an awkward sort of speech, a bit shy and awkward. But it's actually on YouTube. I'll put the link in the chat. It was like, if you want to learn how to present, watch Jenna. And for that fact, her being a grad, not a 20-year veteran, it was mind-blowing. So I thought, who better to ask for a COVID perspective than someone who's already blown the socks off a room full of people that weren't expecting what we got from her speech. So no pressure. But I know you can handle the pressure because you've done it once already.
God, how do I follow that up? Okay. Hi, my name's Jenna Hollis, and I, like Ryan said, I'm a graduate. I graduated in March with a degree in tech. I'm currently working in the tech industry from home, obviously, and I'm 21 years old. So I just thought I'd put that out there because a couple of people were talking about the number 21 earlier, which I think is quite amusing. 21 years working in this, 21 this and that. I thought it was quite funny. So I want to talk about kind of what it's like being a student during COVID. So last time, obviously, we didn't know it was coming. And so like everyone, we were surprised. This time, I feel like we sort of did a little bit, not in like we knew it was going to be within the next week, but I feel like we sort of knew eventually that Delta would come and that maybe we might have to lock down. I feel like our approach to education didn't change, which is, that's a big thing to say, but I mean, in the past day, they've announced that NCA students will have their NCA tests pushed back into December, but that's 8 days, 10 days into lockdown. which is interesting. It's interesting that we've waited that long, but at the same time, it's with good reason. If it was a 3-day lockdown, like we originally thought, then 3 days off that NCA test, you know, it's a lot for an NCA student, but it's not too much. Now it's a lot. And sort of the way that we've gone about it this time sort of doesn't add up. I mean, last time we didn't have the procedures in place. We had to throw something together and get it done. This time we did. We were able, a lot of universities, a lot of schools were able to turn back on their learning programs, to start doing some really cool stuff around mental health. I've got a younger sister and she's in high school, and she's been having daily messages around mental health, asking if she's okay, which is awesome. But it'd be really cool if we could do a bit more. And I don't mean that in like a, we're not doing enough kind of way. I mean that in a, I think there's other ways to teach students other than here's a quiz to do today, here's this. What I've noticed is there's not a lot of face-to-face connection, obviously because we're in lockdown, but there's not a lot of interactive Zoom classes. I sat through quite a few during my first COVID experience, some of them good, some of them bad. And what I found is the ones that really promoted the group learning, the assignments, the projects side of it were the ones I got the most out of. One of my projects I did started out as originally it was going to be a survey of a building. It turned into a sort of digital tour of where I lived, because we were in lockdown, obviously, we could only do our neighbourhood. And so that kind of stuff, that keeps you interested, that keeps you engaged. And as a student, it's something that we'll want to work on. Whereas if we're just going back to the same learning, I can't imagine being an NCA student now and trying to read through those papers and trying to read through those test questions while in lockdown. It would just be really difficult. So I'm just kind of putting it out there. Is our approach currently really the way we should go? Like next year, if we think there's going to be another lockdown, potentially, hopefully not, putting that out there, but if there is, maybe we can kind of consider that students can be tested in a different way. And I don't know what that would look like. I don't have all the answers, the first one to say that, but as a student who went through the Christchurch earthquakes and saw the kind of displacement that learning had through that, I can just say that our approach is really similar. It's really similar to last year, and maybe in the time between last year and this year, we should have thought about that and thought that, you know, parents aren't teachers and students are going to have a hard time, and maybe we shouldn't make it so intense while they're at home because they're already stressed, they don't know what's going on. And yeah, so I just kind of wanted to put that out there. I wanted to see what thoughts people had and what other people think about this situation.
Well, a brilliant rundown. Thank you very much. And once again, I always refer to it as insights from the inside, or what the coalface has to say. And you know, in big business, a lot of the people in this room will know that typically, or historically, we'll say not so much today, but it's still a problem. The board and senior management don't listen to the frontline staff. As a salesperson, I used to go back to Fairfax and say, "This is what we should do. This is what we should do." Beat my head against a brick wall, and that's why I eventually left after 6.5 years, because they wouldn't listen. And you know, you're one of the people in the front lines. We did have some comment from Hinerangi, who has commented about there being a review, and perhaps you know, if we bring our tech product management hats, put those on and say customer feedback. And then also I was thinking about the fact you mentioned almost digital twins, which is a space that Ian works in. And obviously if you've seen the, from the cricket stadiums to the golf courses to the whatnot, those are digital twins of those, you know, virtual environments, of those real ones. So some great feedback. And does anyone want to, Hinerangi, would you like to comment on what Jenna has mentioned, or anyone else?
Well, yeah, it's really awesome to have someone who's 20, 21. I think 21 years ago we started our company, Jenna. So yeah, it is a bit of a crack up. I think it's really cool that you have you're using your voice tonight, and you've got people like, you know, Sir Ian and other sirs and dames on this call, seen and unseen, and that you're talking about something that's really important to you and to us. I think that we should have more kōrero like this, and we should also encourage active citizenship. So, you know, this is one channel to get our voices across. What are the other channels that we can do? You know, we have decentralized authority in a sense with social media. All you need to do is press that Facebook Live button, and you've got a channel for good and bad. And so I sort of think that sometimes with that greater power of our ability to communicate, we also need to harness what is our key message, and what is the action, the call to action that we want, and help people by being a bit specific, so that they can go, yeah, gee, I can do that. That's a small thing I can do, or that's a big action that I can influence. So I chair a workforce development council, Jenna, and it's newly minted. It's some part of the reform of vocational education. And I'm going to be listening and thinking about your words, and thinking about how I can carry your message, and hopefully connect with you on LinkedIn, and create some other pathways that you can share your message directly, not just through me, but for you directly. Kia ora tātou.
Wow, that'd be amazing. That's what we're all about at Talanoa Live. So thank you very much for that, Hinerangi, and also thank you to our speaker, Jenna Hollis. Much appreciated. So I'm just looking for Venus.
Could I add something there?
By all means.
Yeah. So Jenna, I'm 71, so I was 50 when you were born, and it's just an amazing reminder of how much value our young people, why I'm confident about the future, because everything you said was wise, and I was 50 when you were born, and I'm listening to you with the utmost respect. And I think that it highlights once again, and I think this is where we've got to focus, because we could have these discussions and they disappear, but somehow we have to get people to start listening to the people on the dance floor. You're on the dance floor. There are Hinerangi, you're on the dance floor. There's a whole lot of people sitting in this group that are on the dance floor. So how do we get the politicians and decision makers to start listening to the people on the dance floor?
Got to play some good music.
Oh, what a night.
But very, very true. I think just as you were saying it, and it's all, you know, stuff I think about regularly, because I am a true believer in the coalface, or the dance floor, or any of those references, is that, the politicians, governments meant to be there to look after us and serve us. But I think over the years, like probably the worst one would be American for me, where it's like a show more than anything. And there's option one or option two. There's not actually even anything beyond that. Obviously a bit different with the size of their country. But before I go down a rabbit hole, I will find Venus and bring Venus on. And there is a great song, actually. Where's your Venus? I think Venus might have left. She might have left. And I'm looking around thinking maybe it's time to bring on the Rodfather. Oh, that snapped him back into attention. There we go. So got a couple of nicknames for this fella. One is the Rodfather, and the other one is Rodzilla. Depends what we'll hear tonight. So I look forward to some thoughts from yourself, sir.
I wasn't aware I was up tonight, Ryan. Hey, look, first of all, yeah, you dropped me in it, didn't you? Hey, first of all, great speakers to Ian. Jesus, Jenna was great. She's younger than my youngest kid. I was pretty impressed, and all the speakers great. I'm not going to talk on the topic you've done tonight, because honestly, you didn't warn me. But the thing I would like to pick up on the mental health one a little bit, is because I've been noticing that I'm in a bunch of boring old boards, but also a bunch of boards with young startup companies where I'm seeing a lot more of the pressure coming on, and particularly with younger people. And that's probably the most concerning thing of the situation we're in. And I don't know, you can follow Mike King and listen to others and point the bone, but I am concerned about the mental health pandemic and how that's going to play out. And I do worry that the myopic focus on COVID is missing the wider point of what's happening with domestic violence, mental health, just general well-being of a lot of people. So that's a concerning thing, maybe a theme for another day, Ryan. The other thing that concerns me too is, if you read a bit, by design or by default, we've got the biggest ever wealth transfer going on in the world right now. Basically, you've got the baby boomers entering their last stages of life, and Gen X's, which I'm lucky enough to be one, inheriting that. And at the same time, national debts that are mounting through COVID are going to land on Gen Y and Gen Z. So that's another thing that worries me, that we've got intergenerational theft at monumental scales going on at the moment. And young people just not even thinking they'll ever be able to own a house or do any of those things. So that's.
Can I interrupt?
Worries me. Yeah.
I just want to ask, because they're big words, and they don't carry as much meaning for me as when there's a practical example. So you talk about intergenerational theft. So is this practically the fact that we printed $60 billion worth of bonds or money, government bonds, that generated the money that's being spent, and therefore, as the baby boomers pass away, like my parents, I think are baby boomers, Jenna's generation are the ones that are going to have this massive debt to carry, which I think in essence means that our dollar is very weak. And when we go to buy something from overseas, it costs us 10 times the amount that it did prior to COVID. Is that kind of a practical rundown?
Sort of, pretty much. So if you think about, a lot of the wealth that's been created, particularly in New Zealand, is around residential property. It's not generating GDP or growth in itself. As the boomers depart this mortal coil, the X's are picking that up. Huge property gain. The property gains are just ridiculous at the moment. I'm a beneficiary, so I'm not going to personally complain, but the scrum is getting screwed. And then all the debt that's being borrowed is going to disproportionately fall on, people who are 40 and under. So, you've got this whole wealth squeeze going on, and the money that they haven't printed money, they've borrowed money. There's not to 60 billion, there's only a few billion left, so there'll be more borrowed. And that's going to create a big debt burden for a generation or two in front of us. So that's probably, and the stress that goes with that, and those are the conversations I worry that are missing at the moment. A lot of the money being spent is not creating sustainable growth, or it's just being poured into, rightly so, paying for wages and things like that. But I worry about what happens after this. You've heard me bleat on about this before, Ryan. We're not building enough tech companies with global scale and application. A lot of our companies who are paying out the big dividends right now are legacy companies who are rorting the consumer. So those are the things I worry about, is, it's that book winners take all. The scrum has been screwed by design or by default, and that concerns me. How are we going to fix that?
That does sound like a pretty gloomy outlook for the future. But
no, it'll, things always reach equilibrium at some point, but something's going to have to change.
So I'm gonna throw a really naive comment out there for a 44-year-old. But isn't this debt just going to get wiped off because everybody's prorated about the same amount of debt around the world? We in New Zealand, we got 60 billion. America's a bit bigger, so they got 60 trillion. And everyone's just going to go at the end of the day, okay, let's just wipe it off. Can that not happen?
Not really. Somebody's got to pay the piper.
But who is the piper?
Well, it'll be the global banking system, most likely, won't it?
So who's the person in control of that? One person versus 8 billion? I mean, okay, I'm getting a little bit fantastic. I'll step back from that, but
yeah. I guess the key point I was trying to raise is I think we've got some bigger stuff to talk about in due course around how we're going to foster the future generations through what's going to be quite a dramatic time back out the back end of COVID. And I'm not even going to bring up global warming, but we need a reset.
Cool. Thank you very much. So now we're just over 6 o'clock. We were meant to finish at 6 and we never really do on these, which is fine by me. But if you've got to head off for any reason, or you're welcome to stay, I'm not going to shut down anytime soon, but I wanted to open it to the floor. So if someone would like to share thoughts or comment on something they've heard tonight or ask a question about it, by all means, we're a community under the premise of Talanoa, listen and share with respect. So don't be afraid to be first.
But I just follow up on Rod's comment there. I agree, COVID has sidetracked some of the discussions, and I keep coming back to this one salient point, is that in the time it's taken COVID to kill 5 million people, the population of the planet's gone up 180 million. That problem was there before COVID, and it's just slid off the radar. The whole, we've been distracted. We've got to deal with COVID, but we cannot put all this other stuff on hold because it's coming really fast.
So just to throw a bit of a counter in there, bit of a sense check or not, so that it's not that we can't deal with COVID, it's that we have to deal with these other things as well at the same time. Because if you look at in the session this morning, John Foote did some computer data visualization, and it showed without question that when there is a lockdown, it dramatically flattens the curve almost immediately. So I think the curve of the first outbreak was quite big before we managed to stop it. Then the Americold and the Pukekohe ones were actually quite small because we stopped it really quickly. And the Delta one that we have looks very similar, but because it's moving faster, more infectious and shorter times, it is picking up. But it really showed the difference. So the thing is, if we didn't do lockdown, and I'm not saying, so back to your point, Ian, you've raised a few ways that we could potentially do lockdown differently and better. But if we were to not do lockdown, then we would be, what do we have? A lady on the AFQI Cafe this morning who said they had 6,100 something new hospitalizations, not cases, hospitalizations overnight in the UK. And no one's even batting an eyelid because it's nowhere near what it was like during their peak time. So they're just like, oh yeah. And they're out partying, etc., with a 70%.
I think Ian's point is, whilst COVID, yeah, it's important, it's worrying and people are dying, it's actually a sideshow in the greater scheme of things.
And Rod, just to add to that, I honestly think that we'll come through this COVID thing and look around the corner and go, oh my God, where did that come from? And we knew it was coming, but we got distracted. And that doesn't mean not dealing with COVID. You definitely have to deal with it, but we have to do it in a way that says, while we're dealing with this other train is coming, and it's coming really fast.
Cool. Yeah.
And if anyone gets interested, there was a whole bunch of scenarios done in 1971, believe it or not. I think this came out on LinkedIn, I think about 2 weeks ago. There are certain scenarios around the world, and we're tracking on 2 of the scenarios. There's one called status quo, and that's basically we're all completely screwed by 2040. And we're tracking dead on that one. The other one that's the saving grace is if technology can accelerate fast enough to fix the problems, with decarbonisation and such like. But these are the real issues, and what we're leaving the kids of the future is current course and speed. And Ian gave you some numbers here on population growth. We're consuming the planet just way too fast. One could argue depopulation is the answer.
Yep.
One of the things I'm interested in is why we're not actually pausing to learn from the past and then learn from those mistakes previously to then move forward in a different way. Because it strikes me that we are in danger of just repeating old mistakes. And I'm a bit of a history geek and was reading some literature, academic literature yesterday about the second Black Plague in the 1300s. And looking back through that literature, the academic who had done the research was saying that they predicted quite carefully, and they demonstrated from 1300 through the Spanish flu and even the SARS outbreak, the impact on health systems, the societal disruption, the workforce changes, and the death rates. And yet this is not new news for us, whether it's COVID or SARS or bird flu, and yet we perpetuate in thinking, and I'm not quite your age, Ian, but I'm certainly not too far. I'm definitely nowhere near Jenna. She could be my daughter several times over. But I think for me, it's when the hell are we going to actually realise that we need some new solutions to these issues and stop trying to reinvent old wheels, because they're not working and we're not working at pace. And to Rod's point, if the technology can catch up and actually deliver, all well and good. But in the meantime, what are we doing about some of the fundamentals? Because the thing that shocked me in yesterday's 1 p.m. press update was they still don't have ability to do a virtual parliament. Yet I was working in a corporate where we went from no ability to do town halls like this to having almost 1,000 people on within 24 hours to do town halls like this. How that doesn't happen for a virtual parliament. And I'm quite passionate about education and the digital divide. And the Ministry of Education still cannot guarantee every kid in this country has access to consistent data, internet access and devices. So the online learning is completely screwed for a substantial percentage of children. And it's not just primary, it's high school. And it's doing my head in that they knew this 16 months ago and have demonstrably done nothing about it since.
Some good calls there and some very important points and messages. I think, can I suggest something and let everyone pick it apart? Something like the digital divide. I sort of the belief of just make it like the street lights. Give everyone access, give everyone a device. It's not going to be a Mercedes-Benz level device, but it's going to be access and it's going to do the job. Because if these young people, Jenna's age group and below, are going to be working off our debt, then when I'm sitting in a retirement village sipping something, hopefully a whiskey or whatever, they're going to need to have the education now to be able to earn the money to keep the lights on in my retirement village. So we need to put education in the kids' hands. If we've got 60 billion, what does it cost to buy a couple of 100,000 cheap devices and provide connectivity? My background is in sales, and I sold the first shipment of Chromebooks into New Zealand education, and went into the Manaia Trust and said to them, "Oh, I'll get this sponsored. Don't worry, 700 units, no worries." And they said, "No, not sponsoring it." And they were managing themselves for the families to pay their $3.50 a week and pay their $400 off. Now, there's a lot of smart people and all these things called business models and bits and pieces, but ultimately you get down to the practical nuts and bolts, getting a device with connectivity in the hands of a kid, they'll probably sort the rest out themselves, as we see with young kids. I look at my mates' friends with their iPad, kids with their iPads, and I'm like asking them to help me. So what are people's thoughts?
Hey, Ryan, I'll have a crack at this because I probably know enough to be dangerous on this. Probably, one of the challenges is historic, because when you think back to the Kiwi Share, when you had a national right to phone access back in the day that they used to have on us when we were good old telecom, that sort of fell to bits, separated chorus and telecom. I think now, particularly as you're moving to 5G, you've got pretty good population coverage. You can't reach everyone with mobile, but you can reach just about everyone. And maybe there needs to be some sort of thing like the Kiwi Share again, whether you apply it to the industry or not, because they do tax the industry through what used to be the TDL levy. And just because connectivity is the main issue, but mobile broadband between the three mobile players could cover most of that. You just have to find a way to cover that cost, because it is cost prohibitive to the telcos in a business sense. So somebody has to pay it. Probably the taxpayer.
To come back to your big shift of money, I thought you were going to go down the path of the few people, the few people in the world who are already rich getting richer, and the majority who are poor getting poorer.
Oh, we can talk about Bezos.
I thought you were about to offer to pay for it.
Yeah, no, we're not going to talk about no, they wouldn't do that. But you just have to create some sort of national funding mechanism for the connectivity. And then I don't see why you wouldn't go cut a deal with someone like Amazon and give every kid in New Zealand, particularly in the lower deciles, a Kindle and access to an unlimited library. It wouldn't be that expensive,
isn't it?
It wouldn't be that expensive for Amazon to do it. And the PR for them, you've covered a whole nation with Kindles for kids, giving them access, because that's the fundamental thing, the lack of access to learning.
Yeah, and so what they're going to look at doing is, and what the cheapest option at the moment is to run connectivity and do daisy training, whilst doing it at the same time they course do their connectivity kickbacks, so that they help fund it. That's the probably quickest way to sort of enter into that kind of scenario, and it's something that we're investigating quite heavily, starting with Northland. And then if we get that right, because it's able to be done privately, just at the costs, and then probably wrap a charitable trust around it to see if you can get the funding and hit it from that side. Because to jump on the mobile networks with the backhaul and the costs associated with that, it's just a little bit higher. And daisy training is a bit of a workaround, but at the moment it meets the sort of cost profile of the people that don't have access, because at the end of the day, $5, like I saw the skinny one in there, they're $5 a month for 30 gig. That's heaps for some people.
Yeah, and if you just start with Kindles, they suck very little bandwidth to download blogs. It's when you're uploading videos and such like is where the telcos will start worrying. I mean, I used to run the economics, so I know how it works.
Yeah.
So if you're just pushing download over 5G to those digital reading devices, that is nothing. It's nothing.
No.
They'd give it away if you could just cut the deal.
Yeah.
One of the things, Tash, what does Tash think? That's you, Tash.
Oh yeah, kia ora. So yeah, I was thinking, because I know big tech companies, they do non-for-profit stuff. I remember when I was like at Google, they did some stuff around like education, but it wasn't about like providing devices for say, but it was more kind of the skilling programs. So I know at Microsoft, we do have like, I'll pop it down in the chat. We have like non-profit, so you can apply for certain things. But right now we're focusing more on the digital skills, because cloud is a big area, and I don't want to, okay, I will stop because it's going to start sounding like I'm advertising. But yes, but when it comes to devices, if I think about when I'm at my time at OMG Tech, because I don't know if anyone's heard of OMG Tech.
Yep.
Yeah, so pre-COVID, so this year's been a little bit quiet because Mati, who does the events and that, she just came back from Italy recently, and she's on maternity leave. But they would do they have like devices that were sponsored from the Spark Foundation. So Spark Foundation like donated all their like old Lenovo laptops, and those laptops went to like community groups and stuff. So I think for us in New Zealand, we do have organizations that are doing some mahi around, devices. But yeah, I think for big tech in general, like, I don't know about like Amazon, but I'm sure they have some non-profit stuff that they could work with. I can't speak on behalf of them. But also that would be a good idea about the Kindle. I think that's awesome there.
Yeah, well, that's like putting a library in the kids' hands, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
There's such a simple and immediate idea. And again, I put a wee note in there. Maybe Jeff Bezos could donate a few. Or else, in a few years, he won't have anyone to work at bloody Amazon for him, will he?
There's a concern a little bit about the Kindles, and the fact that we're downloading words. Books and words are still the same way we taught, and that's a thing that's already proven to be failing, especially our Māori and Pacifica. Reading things doesn't really inspire that thing. So we need to, this whole idea of delivering videos that inspire and excite and get people talking, telling stories is kind of what Māori do. We told stories that inspired conversations. But I think we should also, as a country, go, why are we talking about charitable organisations for the single most important thing in the country, which is education? Full stop. Education is where we make the biggest change, and it should be an absolute priority. And if you can borrow $60 billion, you can find a way to put that electronic highway to every school in the country. You'll find a way, and it has to be part of the economy of the country that says, this is important. We used to build roads and pay for them. This is the most important road for our young people, and it needs to go to every school, and it needs to happen fast.
Yeah.
Ian, what about if we just downsize government by a third like the Italians did, and we just repatriate that cost reduction in education?
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of places that we could be pulling that stuff back. And then you get this kind of knee-jerk reaction like happened last time, where I don't know how many $1 million they spent racing to grab devices that they then piled off to schools that couldn't use them because they didn't have internet, or no one knew how to use them. And that's an enormous waste that's gone. So we need to stop. We are where we are, but wouldn't it be wonderful if somehow we could all step back and all agree first? You know, the whys are the most important thing in a business, and the why for education, I think, is really crystal clear. And if we all agree on it, because everyone benefits, it becomes the biggest priority for our budgets, because it'll lower health, it'll lower unemployment, and it will give our young people the chance to build those tech companies that will carry us into the future.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think we've got, we're sort of maybe zooming in on the wrong issue by just looking at delivery of getting data to people. That's part of the picture, but we need something that's coordinated. And I guess there's two approaches. One, we try and find a nationwide approach and sort of drop that on everyone. And the other is you sort of break it up more on a more granular level, because different communities might, need different things. And I'm not sure which is the right approach. I think you might say, well, if we do it, one way, we're going to be a whole lot quicker. But then is it going to be adopted, and how's that actually going to play out? But yeah, we need our education system to change. I remember a few years ago, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was probably while National were in government, they talked about offering an education choice that meant you could study remotely and you could use technology to study. And I remember walking through the newsroom at TV3, and this had just been announced, and one of the presenters was saying to me, "Oh, Paul, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." And I said, "Well, what? Why would that be a problem?" I remember as a youngster studying remotely with correspondence school when my family travelled, and that was without all the technology we have today, and it was phenomenal. I learned more in less time. If we can sort of wire these things together, a really good plan. And we understand what the purpose is. I think we can come up with something pretty good. But I'm not sure whether that would need to be nationwide or you slice and dice it up a bit more granularly. Those are my thoughts.
We're talking a lot about like mobility and working in the office or working in not education, but being in school and stuff like that. Does anyone, I'm not hearing maybe it's not the right topic, but I'm not hearing a lot of like the positive benefits of, and we talk about mental health, but the positive benefits of like saying working from home. Like to me, that's actually been a blessing of COVID, because, I've been a big mental health advocate for many years, and a lot of the problem, stemmed from very genetics and very early stages of having chronic anxiety. But I found working in an office can be a lot of the bullying and stuff, especially in New Zealand, but also in America, comes from a lot of the problems can come from working in an office. And I've found that working from home, which I'm doing full time right now, has been absolutely, a blessing. And I just want to, I'm a hands-on guy. I just want to do my technical work. I'm very easy to get along with people and all that. But I want to stay out of the kind of group cliquey, political, office politics stuff, and just do my job. and that's that's what this is kind of led to, and and try throwing being a mental health advocate in, and bullies just see that as, oh well, he's an easy target, and then throw on top of that the double stigma of being a cannabis advocate, and it becomes quite quickly an easy target. So yeah, so
it's an interesting thing to raise.
Could I share an experience? It's been interesting. So 16 months ago, as soon as this hit, we re-equipped everybody's houses with exactly the technology they have on their desk so that they could work from home. And when we went into lockdown, that was had been proved to be the most, fortuitous decision we made. So everyone can work from home. But what we've found is that when the choice is there is this congregation back to work. What I think gives people the kind of mental freedom is to know that if they want to, they can. It's just accepted. So you'll just get nobody even has to call up and say, you just find them, they're online, I'm working from home today.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting that the people who've done it most are the more that are on that autism spectrum. They tended to work initially more from home, but what we've seen recently is that most of them are coming into work as well to be part of a group. And I guess it's important that that group has got to feel like family. Otherwise, you do end up in some shitty office somewhere with a lot of people you don't like.
There are brilliant companies to work for. I mean, but it all depends even within a company, what your direct group within that company is like. Everybody else can be having a good time, but you might be in a shitty project management team or something where everybody's backstabbing one another and people are constantly leaving or whatever. And I just feel like working from home actually avoids a lot of that, and that idle high school office gossip and stuff like that I can't believe.
It does a couple of things.
I can't believe adults are still continue to do.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't get stopped at high school. Therefore, it becomes part of your programmed experiences, and you repeat them the next day. So the next day you're actually in a place of work rather than a school. Well, you still have the people behave the same way. But I haven't looked into this too much, but I know that's something I want to look into. Is humans were never designed or built or created or whatever to be in a organization where there could be 200 people on every floor. So think of something like, we're talking about tech, think about the Googleplex or the Facebook or whatever. Or any organization. If I go back to the Otago Daily Times, when there's 400 people working there and I was working there as a 19-year-old, and I think on my day 3, you'll laugh at this, I was trying to be adult and mature, and I was getting absolutely hammered by a work colleague who was pissed off that this 19-year-old hotshot had come in and was now getting the cool work. I worked as a designer, and I remember saying on day 3 something, they said something really nasty, and I said, you should be careful what you say, because that's kind of how wars get started. And that was like, for my 3 years, I think I was even put on my leaving card, got to be careful, because careful what you say, because that's how wars get started. But jokes aside, the example I go back to is first year psych, and they talk about if someone's going to jump off a building, the person walking by themselves will go, oh, hey, don't do that, it's not that bad, and try and talk them down, and even go up and talk them down off the edge. But put that same person into a group of people, the other ones that will go, well, come on, stop being an arsehole and wasting our time. If you're going to do it, go on, jump. So you got to ask, how could the same person in one situation talk a person down, to another situation tell them to jump? And this is a human's behavior changing in group dynamics, and the ultimate thing that we forget, because we wear cool hats, we read Kindles, we go on sailing boats, we're the only animal that I guess is separation from all the other animals, but we are still animals. So our conscious behavior conflicts with our animal behavior. So when we see bullying and weird behavior and people become arseholes, and even they question, how did I do that sometimes? It's because they're an animal in a situation they're not accustomed to dealing with, and do something based out of their flight, fright, or whatever mechanism, and turn it into custard. So yeah, it is a good benefit. Now I'm going to quickly say it's 6:37, and I hate to be the killjoy, but I want to invite anyone that'd like to share anything for closing remarks, which I think Ian does, but then I start thinking about wrapping up for dinner, if that's okay. No, Ian left.
Did he?
I think so. He put his hand up like he's going to speak, wanted to speak, but I think he was saying goodbye.
I want to go.
Okay, so you got a time limit, 30 seconds.
How about this? Can anyone raise their hand, or do they see that as a benefit, though, the working from home from all this pandemic, and or studying from home or whatever? I mean, I like the option of going in occasionally and seeing people in person, but most of the time it's unnecessary, and it wastes time where I could be, working on support. So
here's a little thought. Does the fact that we only go in on special occasions make it a good experience, and everyone is more that by the time they go in for that special occasion, they're wanting a group, they're wanting collaboration with team, they've had enough of being at home. So it's sort of like when you, I don't know if anyone does this, you eat the same thing all the time so much that you then get sick of it, which I'm about to get to the point of with my peanut slabs, and then you go no, and you change to something else, right? So you have so much stuff, home work from home time, you go, this is great, no arseholes, get on with my work, no interruptions, awesome. And then you get to the point you go, I just want to have a beer and have a laugh with a mate. Can we ever, get together?
We do that in the space that we work in. So we work in an impact house called Taikere. And, the energy that you give off is so infectious. And so if you do go into the workplace, into the office, wherever it is, when you know that there's something good, then therefore, ka whakakiki te kapu, your cup gets filled, which actually engages you to have more productivity. So, post lockdown coming into the space, people were really apprehensive, but at the same time, we wanted to be able to safely reconnect everyone. And we started a thing called Tasty Tuesday. And so every Tuesday, it gave people an incentive to come in where 2 people of our Taikere whānau cook for everyone, and it allows the time to whakawhanaungatanga. So to, figure out what everyone's been up to, but more importantly, we also share what's called our 1-minute life updates. So albeit everyone is on the Awhi app and they share their daily reflections, to be able to actually speak life into what they've shared on the app, and, more importantly, like what's happening right then and there. And if they've got an ask, they're there with other whānau who are like within the space wanting to just be around people, and they're all happy and it's a good time. And so sharing those 1-minute life updates with people and figuring out how we can support each other to do better, and to have that in a way like sustainable impact on how we're going to change the world on a social and an environmental level is such a pivotal thing. So I totally agree. The opportunity to open up that you have the choice to work from home or to go into the office is just phenomenal. Like, there are actually stats that showed so many businesses have now saved a heck ton of money to now no longer having to pay for large leases, people not having to pay for parking, people now have more capacity to take other projects on board, so giving them more productivity on a whole different level. There are so many other benefits from
one thing
this.
that you don't have to do, travel time in Auckland.
Oh, I know. And I would hate to. I just come and visit and it stresses me out. I get annoyed when there's 3 cars deep at the roundabout. I'm like, hey, what is this? We don't have traffic here in Gizzy. What's happening? What's going on? Is there an event on that I don't know about? Because I need to get somewhere.
Need to go home and make the right hat choice. What hat am I going to wear?
Yeah. Do they not know who I am? No. Anyway, yeah, so there are so many benefits from that. And then even being able to, like if you've got, reoccurring events or meetings or whatever, you can actually then mentally prepare yourself from home if it's something that you know is usually draining, and go into it and not dread it as much. I mean, like one of the organizations that we work with Awhi App, we saw that there was a massive plummet every Wednesday afternoon on people's well-being. And we were like, oh, share it with the organization, what's going on? And it was actually because they would have this weekly staff meeting that was just horrible. So it allowed for the organization to actually reflect and think like, okay, this is a reoccurring trend. How can we actually change this? Or, what is it that actually makes them feel this way? And if we want to have an impact on why we're having the meeting and on our staff, we actually better have a piece of our own pie and look at this and figure out, okay, how can we fix it? But yeah, so I definitely know that on the flip side, there are many benefits from COVID alongside with the rest of what our kōrero has entailed tonight.
I hope we can just keep that going, like we don't just get complete. Well, let's just go back to normal after, if ever we can become normal again in terms of the pandemic. I see so many benefits in terms of that, in terms of everything you just talked about, but mental health.
I'm going to leave you all with a challenge,
and more time to actually to work.
Yeah,
I'm going to leave you. Hang on a second there, Cedar. We're going to wrap up now. So what I'm going to do is leave you with a challenge, and that challenge is to work out how do we take all of the subjects that we talked about and bring those together in a way that can enable collaboration from other people and ourselves to actually discard the things that aren't of use and to work on the things that are of use. Because we talk about these amazing things in this session, and then I go and put the video up on YouTube and you can watch it, and probably no one will. So the challenge is, how do we get all of that great info and actually do something useful and effective with it? So that's a challenge I'll leave you with, and we'll close out there. So I'll just bring me back to speak of you. And where am I? I'm just putting myself on speak of you so that I can close off with thank you very much for being part of Talanoa Live. And I'm not even there. I can't even find myself. Hang on. Spotlight me. There we go. Thank you very much for being part of Talanoa Live, a special version of Yarn Live. And this was a town hall where everyone could get in and partake. And I quietly went around everybody saying, would you like to share? Would you like to comment? And some people said no, some people said yes, and obviously a range of people did. But the idea is that we can listen and share with respect and ideally come together as a community and create a better way forward for our future with COVID, with all the different aspects across financial, mental health, you name it, the isms. But I'll leave you with that challenge. How do we actually turn this into effective change? So with that, I'll say ka kite anō, and thank you very much to everybody. It's been a pleasure. Take it easy and enjoy your dinner.
Ryan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, everyone.